This video is brought to you by Nebula. Last week, the Financial Times reported that two members of Starmer's cabinet, UK Foreign Minister David Lammy and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, had signalled their support for China's planning application for a massive new embassy in North London. Nicknamed the Chinese Superembassy, it's on the former site of the Royal Mint, an absolutely enormous 620,000 square feet premises in the borough of Tower Hamlets, which, if it goes ahead, would become by far China's largest diplomatic mission in Europe. This also came a week after UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves travelled to Beijing with a delegation of 10 business executives to meet with senior Chinese officials as part of a reset of UK-China relations. So in this video, we'll discuss why Labour are resetting UK-China relations, the plans for a new Chinese super embassy in London, and what might happen next. Explore which world leaders are winning and which are losing every week with our new podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. First though, let's start with the recent history of UK-China relations. From the start of the 21st century until the late 2010s, the UK had relatively good relations with China, marked by multiple bilateral trade and military agreements. Arguably the most pro-China figures of this period were Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron and his Chancellor George Osborne. In 2015, Osborne ushered in what he said would be a golden decade for UK-China relations, and Cameron even had a pint down the pub with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Also in 2015, the UK became the first G7 member to sign up to China's competitor to the World Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, much to the discontent of the US, whose relations with China were becoming increasingly frosty. However, UK-China soon went the same way. In the mid to late 2010s, there were increasing reports of human rights abuses in China, particularly towards ethnic and religious minority groups, which horrified much of Western society. In the northwestern region of Xinjiang, which has a large Muslim Uyghur population, there were shocking reports of forced labour, religious conversions, and even detainment camps run by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. Around the same time, the CCP began cracking down on freedoms and democracy in Hong Kong, a former British colony, which led to mass protests in 2019-20 and the subsequent migration of hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers to the UK. While Conservative Prime Minister Boris Johnson maintained that China was an important trade partner and even declared himself fervently Sinophile, under Rishi Sunak, the UK got tougher on China, forcing China to remove 6 of its diplomats after a peaceful Hong Kong protester was attacked by staff outside the Chinese consulate in Manchester. Sunak also declared in 2023 that the UK would not return to the close relationship pursued by Cameron. However, under the current Labour government, relations seem to be warming again. This is largely for economic reasons, given the fact that the UK can no longer rely on either the US under Trump or Europe post-Brexit as reliable trade partners, but also because Labour has historically been viewed as less hostile towards China than other parties. Earlier this month, Reeves travelled to China along with a delegation of other senior UK business figures, including the chair of HSBC, Mark Tucker, the head of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, and the chief executive of the Financial Conduct Authority, Nikhil Rathi, to meet with her Chinese counterpart, He Lifeng, as part of Labour's pragmatic effort to reset UK-China relations. They reportedly discussed proposals, drafted by the UK, for closer cooperation on financial regulation and capital markets. However, Reeves was criticised by the Conservatives and Lib Dems for going ahead with the trip instead of staying in the UK to deal with its pressing economic woes. And for more on this, you should check out our other recent videos. Anyway, the main issue here is China's plans for a massive super embassy in North London. This debate goes back to 2018, when China bought the 2.3-acre plot off the Royal Mint for roughly £250 million, or $318 million. However, the plans were dropped after Tower Hamlets councillors voted unanimously to block the scheme in December 2022, due to 4 main concerns that we've listed on screen now, relating to local safety and security issues. For context, since the plans were first proposed, they've been staunchly opposed by both Tower Hamlets locals and by minority groups oppressed by the CCP, but particularly Uyghur Muslims, as Tower Hamlets is the area with the highest proportion of Muslim residents in all of England and Wales. Anyway, after Tower Hamlets rejected the plans, China appeared to let it slide, only to revive the application after the new Labour government came in last July. Just 2 weeks after the general election, the Chinese government sent a new planning application to the council, with documents published on the council website claiming that the council's decision to reject the proposal was without merit and had no basis in planning policy. Now, here's where Labour comes in. A Reuters report in August said that China would miss its deadline to appeal, instead seeking a promise from the UK government to intervene if it resubmitted a planning application. Anticipating a tit-for-tat response from Beijing if they didn't grant permission, Labour seemed to have agreed to it, and that's exactly what's playing out now. So, last week, Lammy and Cooper sent a letter to the Planning Inspectorate for England, seen by the Financial Times, that said London's Metropolitan Police had withdrawn their objection to the plans, saying that there was sufficient space for future protests without significantly impacting the adjacent road network. They also said they'd asked China to change a small element of the design and to give up 7 other diplomatic premises across London. So it seems to be looking good for the Chinese Superembassy, but it's not over the line just yet. The final decision actually rests with Starmer's Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner as Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, although it will also have to go through a public consultation. However, given Labour's warming relations with China more generally, and the fact that Lammy and Cooper have intervened on the planning application as China requested, it looks like the Superembassy will ultimately go ahead. This could throw up a range of issues, including most notably protests from locals and minority groups oppressed by the CCP, but it could also present a genuine security threat. That's because in April last year, 2 men were charged with spying for China in Westminster, and there were real concerns among human rights activists that the CCP could use its Superembassy as a base to both increase espionage and intimidate Chinese citizens in the UK. In the past couple of years, there have been increasing reports about Chinese transnational repression, which activists fear will only rise if a new London Superembassy goes ahead. Like a lot of things, this whole situation is very much in a state of flux. With us entering a new year and Trump re-entering the White House, well, the world has felt more stable, hasn't it? Every day we're faced with weird headlines, from Trump's attempts to take over Canada and Elon's wild ride in Europe, or even Trump trying to swap New Jersey for a shiny Charizard on the playground. Okay, that last one might not be real, but we do dive into the chaotic world of US politics in our series WTF USA. That's our series where we explain everything that's happened across the pond in the land of the free. Because while the election might be over, with Trump in the Oval Office, the number of WTF moments only looks likely to increase. Unlike some of our other more serious videos, the tone of WTF USA is more light-hearted, and takes something of an irreverent look at what's going on. If you're interested, WTF can be found exclusively on Nebula. Now, if you didn't know, Nebula is an independent, creator-owned streaming platform that specialises in thoughtful content. Over there, you can find creators like Wendover Productions, Real Life Law, and Legal Eagle, with many of them releasing their very own original series on the platform. We're super proud of WTF USA, and we hope that with your support, we'll be able to make other interesting, weird, and entertaining series with Nebula in the future. So signing up genuinely helps TLDR to grow and expand. You can also watch every normal TLDR video on Nebula ad-free, and in some instances before they land on YouTube. If you're not a member already, click our link in the description to get 40% off. We really hope you check out the series, and as always, thanks for your support.